Is Richrod going to have West Virginia in the playoff inside of 2 years, and could he use two quarterbacks to get there? Let's talk about that because somebody believes he will.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is up? Happy Friday to you guys. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am the host, and this is Locked On West Virginia. Thanks for joining. Brought to you by FanDuel. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Make sure you head to FanDuel right now to get started. Well, there has not been a lot happen, obviously, today, so I figured I would talk about some things that have happened over the last couple of days. I debated talking about private capital / private equity, debated talking about a couple other topics. The basketball game is tomorrow, but I couldn't get anybody on here to talk about BYU, and I really didn't want to do it alone. I am going to try to touch on it. We'll see. But in this case, there's a guy that thinks Richrod will have West Virginia in the playoffs inside of 2 years. And Richrod actually talked about yesterday in his press conference, two quarterbacks. And I think that's a really intriguing possible option heading forward for West Virginia. And it's not something that he's removed from doing because he's definitely done it. Let's start with the Richrod comments first, and then we'll move over to this analyst that thinks that Richrod will have us back in the playoff inside of 2 years, which is a wild thing to say, but we're going to go there. But before we do, like I said, Richrod talked about two quarterback system yesterday. I found it to be really interesting, intriguing, multi-Q quarterback system idea or possibility. So Mike Oste wrote an article, and I'm just going to mention the quotes from Richrod in it, but I want to make sure Oste gets his credit here. He quoted Richrod here saying, some coaches say if you have two, you have none. If you have three, you have none. I don't believe that. I say if you're good enough to win, just play with them. That's for any position, including quarterback. To clarify, this doesn't mean they will share equal time or rotate every other series, but the backup could play far more often than just in the FCS game or if the bad game is decided. Maybe specific packages would be designed for frequently for the backup. Rodriguez has continuously emphasized that he will try to get a player good enough to help the team and get on the field as much as possible. So he says his offensive is quarterback-centric, and he's intentionally made it freshman-proof and easy to learn. He's done this intentionally in case he loses a player to the portal or injury. Quote, the progress of quarterbacks has been good to see. We have three quarterbacks who have started Division I football games, and then we have a couple of talented freshmen. I think that room has showed really good progress, said Rodriguez, as his early evaluation of the quarterback room. I think with the mentality we have in that room, there are some really competitive guys, and they want to show that they can do both in practice and in the game. And so, this is one of those things where when it works well. When it doesn't work well. You've seen Oklahoma do it when they had Bell. You've seen, obviously, Florida did it with Chris Leak and Tim Tebow. It's been done to varying levels of success. At West Virginia, I guess we've had semblances of it before, but really it's just rotating quarterbacks. In this scenario, I could only imagine that for this to actually play out, because, a lot of the reasons you use two is because one is good at one thing, the other's better at the other thing, and they kind of cover up each other's weaknesses. I'm not necessarily sure that, at least with Nico and Jalen, that's the case. As a matter of fact, on my tape study, I think Jalen's further ahead in 2 or 3 areas. Jalen's a little bit better thrower of the football at this point in his career, at least from what I've seen on tape, and he's a faster runner. Nico is he's definitely a more physical runner, and he's not far behind in throwing ability. So it's not like it's some huge gap here. I'm talking, I think Henderson's just got a bit more live of an arm for now, a little bit better. He throws from a few more different arm angles as to where Nico doesn't yet. Doesn't mean he can't. I saw some stuff today in practice footage where he looked good. And I continually will say I feel like he's the best case scenario is for him to be good. So we're hoping for that, but it's, like I say, no guarantees there. So it would be fascinating to see. I don't know what to expect though. I think that's a situation where I think one of those two guys is going to win out. Now, Max Brown is a wild card, no doubt. He's got a lot of talent as well. And what's interesting is he's not being mentioned a lot. Let's pay attention and see if he gets mentioned because he's got a ton of talent. Like I said, watching his film and especially his practice film, which is not game film, and I get that. He's got a big arm and throws it from a ton of angles. So we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting. My prediction for now, though, is one guy's going to win the job, and I think that's what we'll do. I want to go over the receiver depth chart really quick. Richrod said something else yesterday that I thought was very interesting. He hasn't really gone out there and said a lot about many positions. But wide receiver is not one of those spots. As a matter of fact, he's openly said multiple times now that that's where we got to get better. And so I was looking at a projected depth chart from 247 just to try to figure out, who we have in the room that's viable right now. These are the names in the receiver room that they have for now. You got Cam Bond, Cyrus Trawl, Jaleel Hall, Torrey Johnson Jr., Jeffrey Weimer, Jaden Bray, Brandon Raymond, Gerald Williams, Rodney Gallagher, Oron Singleton, Dom College, Jared Bowie, Monty Weaver, and Tyshawn Dews. And that's it. Richrod's got a good point. This receiving room is not there yet, obviously. And it's going to be interesting to see who or if they go after anybody because let's be honest here, that room is unproven as hell. Like there's some guys in there that's got production, like I bring up all the time, Oron Singleton, Jeff Weimer have both been productive at varying levels, different levels. Group at the group of 5 level. This is scaled up. So I'm really looking at that receiver room to see who could step up and be another guy. Obviously, I love Trawl and his route running. I think Cam Bond's possibly a number 1 guy. I think Weimer's possibly a number 2 guy, and I think Singleton is possibly your other number 1. But I do think we need another big guy in there. Jaden Bray at 6'2", 205 certainly could be that, but I don't know what's going to become of him yet from an injury standpoint. He went out last year, didn't play a lot. And, he had one good year at Oklahoma State, but it hasn't really been what we hoped yet. So it's going to be super interesting to see. Up next on Locked On West Virginia, let's talk about Richrod and the possibility that they might take West Virginia to the playoffs. I think this is an intriguing scenario, and one reporter says he thinks he will. Stick around. This is Locked On West Virginia. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is brought to you by Fabric by Gerber Life. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and then before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life is simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. When Fabric, you can apply for life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help get their families protected. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Segment 2, let's crack a do. So I was looking at an article earlier that's got some video attached to it. I don't know if it's going to play. I can't. I'm assuming there's not a ton of people in the chat today. I don't know if there's something I'm missing here, but um, it's kind of unusual. So I don't know if something didn't go live. I honestly haven't checked everything. Yeah, everything is live. So anyway, I'm going to try to share this, but I have no feedback in the chat room to say whether or not the video is messed up. I'm assuming it is, probably, because there's not a lot of people in here, and usually that's what happens whenever the video feed is messed up. So for those of you listening on podcasts, it really doesn't apply to you as much because you can't see me. But I am going to try and play this audio here where it's talking about Richrod taking West Virginia back to the playoff, or to the playoff. Let me say that. Be right back. Yeah, I figured it was slow, of course. Oh, well, nothing I can do about it, you know. I've tried everything. I literally tried everything, y'all. Let's see. All right. See if you guys can at least hear this. You might not be able to see it, but we'll see.
How do you think Richrod will do in his return to West Virginia?
So every time that West Virginia has always been that hot team, Richrod's a guy. And also Pat White's been there. Pat White's back in the house. So culturally, this is what West Virginia needs. This is the energy and the cultural fix. Because when you think about West Virginia, this is Richrod. In the Big 12, schedule lines up well enough for them. It's not like you're running through that juggernaut that we're talking about that Georgia and the SEC has to go through. Wouldn't say 10, but I would put them right at about 8 wins this year.
Okay. He had 3 11-win seasons. That was back in the Big East, which was not the conference that they're currently in now. But I want to turn up the heat on this question a little bit. How long until Richrod is in the playoff?
I'll give Rich 2 years. 2 years. He's going to find his right guy. And again, where they're at in the Big 12, went over it on Monday. The Big 12 might get 2 teams in. And when you get Richrod, explosive offense, they can score a bunch of points. College football is about scoring points, and you just have to do enough on defense. And they're doing very well in recruiting. They're going up in my DMV area and pulling out some of the better players.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't expecting that, but glad to see it anyway. Smoke Dixon, thank you for bringing that up. So interesting for me. I think that's he said a lot there. So let's start with the 8-win season. That's the first prediction he made. I don't necessarily see it this year. I think that this year it's not done yet. And we haven't, spring portal period still has to happen. I feel good about our secondary and our defensive line and a couple of our linebacker spots. And I feel good about our running back room. And that's really about it. Everywhere else, I'm a little bit concerned. Offensive line is a major concern for me because I think it's unproven, obviously. There could be good players in there. We got some good guys in the portal. I feel like it's unproven. Wide receiver, there are some players in there unproven, really. You've got the major guys with production are Oron Singleton and Cam Vaughn. There's your production. Those guys both did that at the Group of 5 level. That's, and Jeff Weimer, but he did that was FCS. So you don't have and then if you go back 2 years, you can find some production for Jaden Bray at Oklahoma State, but it wasn't a ton. But it was like, if I remember right, 300-400 yards, maybe more, 4 or 5 touchdowns. It wasn't like, like a 1,000-yard season or anything. But Bray's definitely got a ton of talent at 6'2", close to 6'3". So I think this team, obviously there's some things I need to see addressed in the spring period. They're going to have to release some guys. Richard's already said that. I thought about doing a video on that too, because trying to speculate as to who he might release to get to that 105 number, and then beyond 105, who might he release, because we're going to have to bring in other players besides, like, we're going to have to trim some of the fat. I don't know. I have to look closer at the roster, and obviously we got to get through spring to see who's here anyway. Some of these problems could take care of themselves if people transfer. And then the other thing he said, inside of 2 years to the playoff. What? I think it's possible. I really do think it's possible, because I have a lot of faith in what Richrod did here the first time around, and maybe I'm getting hung up on it, and maybe it's something that doesn't apply to today's game and all that. But there's only been one guy that's been able to do what Richrod has done at West Virginia, as far as just in a short time span. Now, Don Nealon, what he did was amazing. Not saying it wasn't amazing. 3 11-win seasons is just, it's really, really hard to do. And obviously it was done at a time where, it was there in the Big East. I think the Big 12 obviously is a tougher conference than the Big East was. Maybe not at the top, but certainly in a lot of areas. So I'll say this too. Like, I could also see it going the other way, to where maybe he struggles to get there quickly, but ends up getting there a little bit later than we all expect. Because I think Richrod's going to learn a couple lessons along the way that he hasn't had a chance to learn yet. From a portal perspective, there's a lot to learn for him at this level with the way things are in football now. So I won't be shocked if there's a learning curve for him, but 2 years is a really quick turnaround to get to the playoff, but we've seen guys do it. I just think we need to address some of the issues that are at hand as far as roster-wise before we can start singing those praises. Now, I think we've got 2 or 3 pieces on the offensive line I feel comfortable with. I think we got maybe 2 on the wide receiver spot that I'm okay with. I think we've got 4 or 5 guys in the running back room that I feel pretty good about. To be honest, I love our freshmen too, and I think they were being groomed well under Chad Scott. I don't think there's a big deal there that where he couldn't have developed those guys to be ready. So I think they're going to be fine. But yeah, the wide receivers, the offensive line, a couple linebacker spots, not all of them, and then the secondary, is, we've got starters at every spot, I feel like, for the most part, but there are a few positions in the secondary that need touched up as well. So there's work to do, which is why the 8 wins is not something I would say yet. I think we're getting close. We're like a number 1 receiver, a really elite or a really good offensive line add, maybe just one. If we can just get one really good one, because I think Bosley, Livingston, Crawford, and Young Bear are all pretty good. And then Will Reed is a guy that I think has a chance to be really good too. But I would love to see some competition get in that room. And we'll see. It's going to be fun to keep tabs on. I know that much. And this is one of those seasons that it's going to be unpredictable at the very least, but it's Richrod, man. It's going to be instant fun. Fun is back. So one of those things I think that we're all going to come to appreciate is fun is back in Morgantown. Even the press conferences are fun again. So keeping track of that's going to be great, guys. Let's go to a break real quick. Coming back, we'll talk some basketball. Can West Virginia pull off the upset on the road against BYU? I think they can. Let's talk about it. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is going to be brought to you by Prize Picks. March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points and Anthony Davis for more than 12 rebounds. I love how I can make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. Download the app today and use code Locked On College to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On College for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Do it at Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, we are back here on Locked On West Virginia, talking West Virginia Mountaineers football and basketball. And let's look the game up really quick. West Virginia versus BYU tomorrow at 10 o'clock. What a late start. God. I mean, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. We've had it so freaking crappy on these start times. I had no idea it was going to be that late. That's crappy, man. Good luck winning that game at 10 o'clock at night. Are we serious? Are we actually serious right now? 10 o'clock at night? I mean, I know it's a Utah trip, but it's going to be so hard to do, at elevation, the whole thing. We'll see what happens. Obviously, let me see what the line is on this. And what's the streaming on this? Let's see. Go back. This will be West Virginia's first trip to BYU, which is very interesting. I thought West Virginia really got a bad whistle against the game, with the game at West Virginia. Not even a bad whistle, like one of the worst whistles I've ever seen. Truthfully, I really hated it. So we got out rebounded badly last game, and the bench really outscored our bench. That can't happen this game. We were in control for that game for a lot of it, and then it got away from us late, obviously. I think they're really good at home. Got Rich Hollenberg and King McClure on the call, so here we go again with King McClure, who he's been against West Virginia this year quite a bit, in my opinion. I could be just crazy, but you got BYU with winning 5 in a row here. They're one of the hottest teams in all basketball. They're winning games by over 12 points a game. Field goal percentage somewhere up near 50. West Virginia is going to have to play a really, really good game to get this win. I think we're capable. Certainly, I think, a couple of the games we've won this year have been just as tough. I think we're prepared for this game. You've only got a couple games left in the season. You can kind of lay it all out there a little more, knowing that the season's coming to an end pretty soon anyway. And I'll give West Virginia a punching chance in this game. Being that it's at 10 o'clock tomorrow, I'll see if I can get somebody on to talk about it early in the day, because I think it's worth doing. I think West Virginia is going to win this game, man. Something just keeps telling me to pick West Virginia. I don't know what it is about it, but I feel pretty good about it. I think BYU has got to be due for a loss here. They've been playing so well over the last month-ish plus. But, like, you look at some of the teams they've beaten here over this stretch. I think it started with us. They had the loss to Cincinnati, which was by 20. Then they beat us by 4 at home. Then they beat Kansas State. Then they beat Kansas. So then they beat Arizona, and then they beat Arizona State. So, they've had a real nice run here with wins over Arizona, us, and Kansas. That's certainly impressive. But I still think West Virginia can win this thing, especially since they may be looking ahead to that top 10 matchup versus Iowa State on March 4th. And then they got the Holy War to end the season with Utah coming to town. Those are all factors. West Virginia could be kind of looked over for this game. I doubt they'll overlook us based on how we played them last time. But, you win this game, you're talking about not only so solid, like you're in the tournament now, but you win this game, it's not how far are it's how solidly are you in, like what's your seed at 8? Do you move up to an 8 seed with the win? Do you move up to a 9 maybe? They've got us at a 10 right now, I believe. Would love to improve that. I think we can get to 20 wins. You're talking about anywhere from a 6 to an 8. You win a couple games in the tournament, and then you can maybe get in that top 6 range, and then you're making some hay because West Virginia needs to play teams that are smaller, teams that rely on the 3, and that are smaller. That would be the best matchup for West Virginia. So let's hope we can get that kind of thing going. Thanks for watching tonight, guys. Not a whole lot to talk about. We talked about Nico and Jalen, possibly 2 quarterback system, maybe a few more with Max Brown, or who knows who could step into this race. With Richrod at the helm, it could be anybody. We had a commentator say that Richrod could take us to the playoff. I found that to be pretty crazy. We'll see where that goes, and then the basketball game. So appreciate you guys for joining. I'm going to get off here and just enjoy the weekend. I'm tired. I spent all day at the bank and just over different things. So I'm going to cut it short, but I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll record before the game and likely after. So make sure you're tuned in here for that. Hit that like button before you go. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and I'll talk to you guys later, guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you then. Later.